The story begins by introducing Jackal, a world-class assassin, disguised with a realistic mask and mimicking the voice of his last victim. The victim, a janitor working for a major corporation, was only a stepping stone for Jackal to reach his true target, Manfred Fest, a right-wing German chancellor candidate. Shortly after, Jackal enters the Fest Corporation lobby, bypassing all security protocols with ease. Observing Elias, Manfred's son, chatting with his assistant, Jackal follows him to an adjacent office. There, Jackal silently prepares a silenced pistol and swiftly eliminates Elias's assistant as he enters the room. Security officers, alerted by the commotion, rush in but are quickly dispatched by Jackal. He then fires a deliberate miss at Elias, causing him to flee in terror. Chasing him down the stairs, Jackal shoots both of Elias's legs, leaving him injured and begging for his life. Without a word, Jackal disappears into the shadows. Moments later, Jackal escapes to the rooftop to evade responding police and throws a smoke grenade to create chaos before rappelling down the building and vanishing into the night. Back in his hideout, Jackal removes his intricate disguise, revealing his youthful face. He checks the wind speed in preparation for the second phase of his mission the following evening, then rests. The next morning, news of the attack on Elias spreads rapidly, while Manfred rushes to the hospital to visit his son. At the same time, Jackal, now preparing a long-range sniper rifle equipped with a magnetic trigger, sets up in a hideout directly overlooking the hospital where Elias is being treated. He surveys the area and tests his scope with a single shot, recalibrating for perfect accuracy. Minutes later, Manfred arrives at the hospital, accompanied by a security detail and surrounded by protesters opposing his party. Jackal patiently waits as the convoy comes to a stop. Soon after, the security team quickly moves to escort Manfred into the building within a 10-second window. At the perfect moment, Jackal fires a single, precise shot that hits Manfred just as he enters the building. Seeing this, one of the guards uses binoculars to spot the sniper's glint, but Jackal, rather than taking him out, opts to pack up his gear swiftly, leaving a bomb behind. As the police close in, the bomb detonates, leaving destruction in its wake. During the chaos, Jackal escapes, parking his car in an underground lot before blowing it up to cover his tracks. The scene then shifts to Bianca, an MI6 weapons specialist, who reads about Manfred's assassination. She returns home to her husband, Paul, and their daughter, Jasmine, who are watching an interview with a tech billionaire, Old Dag Charles. It was revealed that Charles is developing software called River, designed to expose the secret transactions of other billionaires. At one moment, the family's attention turns to the news about Manfred's assassination, which piques Bianca's interest. The next day, Bianca investigates the sniper report and is astonished to learn the shot was fired from over 2 miles away. Soon after, a meeting is held to discuss the assassination. Although not invited, Bianca pleads with her superior, Osita, to let her join, citing her expertise in sniping. Despite her name not being on the list, Bianca sneaks into the meeting, determined to uncover the truth. At that moment, the team received a briefing from German intelligence. However, Bianca interrupted, asking the presenter to confirm the record-breaking shooting distance. Bianca explained that the barrel size needed to make such a shot would not fit into a typical sniper rifle case unless the weapon had a collapsible barrel. She added that such a design was considered impossible due to alignment issues. However, Bianca mentioned knowing a weapons maker named Norman Stoke who had been working on a collapsible barrel for years. Osita was hesitant to pursue this vague lead, but Bianca insisted she could track it down. After the meeting, Bianca was asked to stay back for a discussion with Isabel Kirby, a senior MI6 official who wanted more information about Norman. During their conversation, Bianca explained that Norman was a renowned weapons maker, often tied to high-profile assassination weapons. In the end, Isabel expressed high expectations for Bianca and urged her not to let them down. On the other hand, Jackal arrived in Paris and headed to a cafe where he accessed the dark web to collect his payment. While there, Jackal received an anonymous offer for another assassination, but the client requested a face-to-face meeting. Initially, Jackal refused, but after seeing the offer of 10 million, he broke his protocol and agreed to the meeting for an upfront payment of 1 million. Elsewhere, Bianca traveled to Northern Ireland to meet her contact, an agent codenamed SP Sparrow. Shortly after, Bianca found Sparrow inside a store, discovering that she was a woman named Allison, who also happened to be the wife of Norman's brother. At that moment, Allison claimed that she hadn't seen Norman in a long time, but Bianca, sensing deceit, demanded answers. Under pressure, Allison finally promised to try and get information about Norman, and Bianca instructed her to stay in touch. Meanwhile, Jackal collected his payment from the meeting and departed. He traveled to Sweden, waiting at a remote location to meet his client. Moments later, a woman named Zina arrived and entered a nearby cabin, where Jackal joined her. During their discussion, Jackal learned that his target was Ul, the tech billionaire. Hearing this, Jackal demanded $100 million for such a high-value target. When Zina said she needed to consult her associates, Jackal vanished without a trace. Back in Northern Ireland, Bianca had yet to hear back from Allison. Frustrated, she instructed her team to gather all available information about Allison's daughter, Emma. Later, Bianca attended a meeting with Isabel and Osita to discuss the previous sniper attack. Bianca explained that Allison was uncooperative, leading the team to target her daughter, Emma, who was involved in a radical left-wing group. In a brief turn of events, during a protest by the left-wing group, Bianca spotted Emma among the demonstrators. Seeing this, she ordered officers to arrest Emma and take her into custody. Bianca then monitored the interrogation from another room, accusing Emma of assaulting a police officer with a bottle. However, Emma denied the allegation and demanded a lawyer, which was precisely what Bianca had anticipated. In the end, Bianca instructed Emma to call her mother, while she was subsequently placed in a holding cell. On the other hand, Jackal is seen arriving in Spain at a large villa. Inside, he is greeted joyfully by his wife, Nuria. After their brief reunion, Jackal heads to his office to contact his client regarding a quick assassination. However, the client now refuses to pay him. Meanwhile, in custody, Emma suffers a heart attack and is rushed to the hospital with Bianca anxiously accompanying her. During the ride, Emma experiences another heart attack, and despite everyone's efforts, she passes away. Later, at home, Bianca receives a call from Allison, who has figured out that Bianca was behind Emma's arrest. Bianca denies any involvement and refuses to disclose Emma's death. She instead tells Allison to retrieve Norman's phone number, promising to take care of Emma. The next day, Bianca is called to a meeting with Isabel and Osita to discuss Emma's death. They are joined by Mr. Carver, whom Isabel introduces as the man responsible for cleaning up agency messes. At that moment, Carver insists that MI6 must not, under any circumstances, be linked to Emma's death. Bianca defends herself, explaining that she used a fake name to interview Emma. However, Osita proposes shutting down the operation, calling Bianca's lead a dead end. Bianca argues that uncovering the mastermind behind the assassination of a major political figure is far more critical than Emma's death. Isabel sides with Bianca, and Carver agrees to help conceal Emma's death for 24 hours. After the meeting, Bianca contacts Allison, known as Sparrow, and lies, claiming her superiors have agreed to release Emma if Allison can provide Norman's number. Meanwhile, Jackal is at home with Nuria and their son, Carlo. Later, he retreats to his office alone to research Ul and reviews reports on how River will revolutionize the financial landscape. Jackal also logs onto the dark web to confront a previous client who refused to pay for his first assassination. Shortly after, Nuria enters the office but quickly leaves, sensing Jackal is deep in thought. Jackal explains that a client has failed to fulfill their obligation and that he needs to handle the matter. He also shares his hopes for a major deal that could allow him to spend more time with his family. The scene shifts to Zina, who meets her employer, Timothy, a businessman determined to ensure Jackal completes his assignment. Moments later, they watch another TV interview with Ul, where he elaborates on River's capabilities. Timothy, visibly irritated, turns off the TV and sternly declares that Ul must die before River is launched. Meanwhile, Allison is at home with her husband, Larry. She is deeply worried about Emma and expresses her desire to visit her in England. However, Larry reminds her they lack the funds. Desperate, Allison suggests that Larry contact Norman for financial help. Larry hesitates, knowing it could lead to trouble, but Allison insists that she has no other choice. Several days later, Jackal hosted a birthday party for Carlo, with Nuria's family also in attendance. During the celebration, Jackal received a message instructing him to access his bank account. While doing so, Jackal managed to trace the location of a client who had deposited money but refused to pay the full amount. Returning to the party, Jackal packed his belongings, much to Nuria's disappointment. After saying goodbye to everyone, Jackal prepared to wait for his taxi, but Nuria insisted on driving him. Meanwhile, Bianca reviewed footage featuring Jackal in disguise, analyzing every detail about him. Shortly after, Nuria dropped Jackal off at the airport, but as soon as she left, Jackal hailed a taxi and headed to his bank's safe deposit box. There, he retrieved a stash of cash and forged travel documents. Afterward, Jackal exited the bank and re-entered the taxi. While buying flowers for herself, Nuria was shocked to spot Jackal riding in a taxi. She called him, but her call went to voicemail. Confused, Nuria returned home and explained what she had seen to her mother, who immediately assumed Jackal was having an affair. Nuria's mother scolded her for jumping to conclusions, and though Nuria wanted to believe otherwise, she resolved to get to the bottom of it. Elsewhere, Allison discovered that Larry had contacted Norman and was now waiting for a response. At the same time, Bianca reported her findings to Isabel and Osita. She deduced that the assassin was likely British and possibly ex-military due to his exceptional skills. Bianca also uncovered that the backpack he carried was sold exclusively in the UK and not available internationally. While Bianca requested more time to work with Allison, Isabel declined and urged her to obtain results by the next day. In Germany, Jackal received a call from Zina, confirming her employer's acceptance of his terms. However, Zina insisted on meeting in person, given the high stakes of the deal. In the end, Jackal agreed, but demanded they come to him. At the same time, Allison and Larry were at a bar. Seizing an opportunity while Larry went to get drinks, Allison discreetly took a photo of Norman's phone number before he returned. Later, Bianca arrived home to find Jasmine preparing dinner. Soon, Paul's two sons joined them at the table. As the family sat down to eat, Bianca received a message from Allison containing the photo of Norman's phone number. Without delay, Bianca got ready to leave, bidding a rush farewell to Paul and Jasmine, who were visibly disappointed. Fast forward, Bianca arrived in Libya to track down Norman. There, she was joined by Spencer, an MI6 agent assigned to assist her with the mission. Meanwhile, Zina was dining at a restaurant when she received instructions about where to meet Jackal. She left the restaurant, unaware that Jackal, in disguise, was following her. Zina later sat on a park bench and Jackal joined her. During their meeting, Zina and her employer attempted to negotiate the payment again. However, Jackal firmly stood by his original fee, arguing that they were paying him only for the kill, while he also had to worry about his escape. Unexpectedly, Zina offered an initial payment of $20 million, with the condition that the assassination be carried out within weeks before River's release. Jackal reluctantly agreed, stating that he disliked being rushed but would begin work as soon as the payment was made. Afterward, Jackal visited a previous client's bank and uncovered that the deposit originated from a company named Heine. Curious, Jackal investigated the company, which led him to a clue about a trust, connecting pieces of a larger puzzle. Meanwhile, Bianca and her team were closing in on Norman's location. Parking a safe distance away, they approached his cabin with their guns drawn. Bianca then called out to Norman, demanding his surrender, but they were unaware of a bomb rigged at the entrance. As a result, the explosion injured one of their agents but left Bianca and another unharmed. Suddenly, Norman opened fire, killing the second agent in a hail of bullets. Bianca pressed forward, engaging in an intense gunfight with Norman as he tried to escape. Although Norman managed to get away, Bianca spotted a suitcase left behind and secured it under heavy fire before calling for an evacuation. Elsewhere, Jackal reviewed photographs of individuals connected to the trust. After examining the images, he discovered that the person involved was a close business partner of Elias Fest. This led Jackal to realize a shocking truth. Elias was the one who ordered the assassination of his own father. Back at headquarters, Bianca faced harsh criticism from Osita, who believed she should be removed from the mission. However, Bianca revealed the suitcase she recovered from Norman. Inside, they found pieces of a sniper rifle. As Bianca began assembling the parts, she explained that this was how a sniper would construct their weapon. Her skills and insight impressed both Osita and Isabel, who decided to keep her on the mission. Later, Bianca sent Allison a message breaking the news of Emma's death. She followed up with a phone call to apologize and offered to meet in person to talk. Meanwhile, in Spain, Nuria's mother tried to convince her that Jackal's frequent trips were suspicious. Nuria, refusing to believe it, decided to confront Jackal directly. During their call, Nuria revealed that she had seen him in a taxi. Jackal denied it, insisting it wasn't him. Still unconvinced, Nuria demanded a video call to see his surroundings. Jackal complied, providing a convincing alibi for now. However, Nuria expressed her growing unease, mentioning her desire to visit Amsterdam. Jackal made another excuse, deepening Nuria's suspicion that he might be leading a double life. She told Jackal that their life together felt far from normal, leaving her deeply worried about their future. Later, Nuria returned to Jackal's office, determined to find evidence of his suspected infidelity. While searching, she discovered a hidden safe embedded in the floor. Meanwhile, Allison and Larry arrived in England to identify Emma's body. Overcome with grief, Larry refused to join Allison at the morgue, asking her to go alone. After completing the identification, Allison left the building, only to realize she was being followed by Bianca. The two met in a nearby park, where Bianca apologized for Allison's loss but denied involvement in Emma's arrest. Despite Allison's visible sorrow, Bianca demanded to know Norman's whereabouts, threatening to detain both Allison and Larry for aiding a fugitive responsible for killing two MI6 agents. Unshaken, Allison walked away. Elsewhere, Larry received a call from Norman. When Allison returned home, she could sense that something was wrong. Larry confronted her, suspecting her resolve to contact her brother, and now realizing the danger they were in. Demanding her phone, Larry broke down in tears upon discovering Allison's betrayal. When Allison attempted to flee, Larry pulled her back into the apartment. Meanwhile, Carver launched an investigation into the breach of the Norman operation, trying to uncover how information had been leaked. He began questioning agents involved in the mission, including Bianca. Elsewhere, Nuria confided in her mother and her brother Alvaro about the hidden safe she found but admitted she couldn't guess the code to open it. Alvaro suggested they locate the receipt for the safe and contact the manufacturer to reset the code. Later, Bianca was called into a secret meeting with Osita to discuss the leaked mission details. At that moment, Osita revealed that only two other people were aware of the operation: Bianca's colleague, Damien, and Isabel. Unsure of who the traitor might be, Osita advised Bianca to keep her circle of trust extremely tight. That evening, Nuria and her mother examined the house's blueprints and discovered the presence of a hidden room within the walls and inside the closet. In the end, they uncovered a large hidden safe concealed within the wall. Meanwhile, Jackal received his initial payment from Xena and headed to a parking lot under the cover of darkness. There, Jackal ambushed Elias's driver while disguised as him and killed the man to take his place. At the same time, Bianca received the results of a wiretap on Norman's phone and discovered that he had spoken with someone called Jackal shortly before the assassination of Manfred. At Manfred Fest's funeral ceremony, Elias was heading back to his car, surrounded by armed guards and police officers. However, Elias exited in a different convoy when, suddenly, his driver shot one of the guards and sped away with him. It was revealed that the driver was Jackal, who now engaged in a high-speed chase to escape Elias's pursuing security team. Through skillful maneuvers, Jackal managed to evade the guards. Once Elias recognized him, he angrily confronted Jackal about being shot by him before. Elias, now desperate to save his life, offered to pay any amount, but Jackal coldly stated that this was about principles before shooting Elias dead. Jackal then planted a bomb inside the car and disappeared, leaving it to explode just as backup agents arrived. Meanwhile, Bianca received a message from Allison, requesting a meeting. At the same time, Nuria and her mother watched as Alvaro managed to unlock the safe they had discovered. Inside was a secret room where Jackal had created his disguises, stored cash, and kept his weapons. Unbeknownst to them, Jackal was monitoring their actions through security cameras. Elsewhere, Bianca was called into a meeting with German intelligence regarding Elias's death. They revealed that Elias had orchestrated the assassination of his own father and was killed by the assassin after failing to pay. However, no one had managed to get a good look at the killer, leaving Bianca increasingly frustrated. Meanwhile, as Jackal drove, he was momentarily distracted by a bird and ended up rear-ending a delivery truck. He offered to pay for the damage and even compensate the driver's monthly salary, but the driver refused and flagged down a police officer to report the incident. The officer demanded Jackal's documentation and insisted on inspecting the trunk of his car. Inside the trunk was a bag, and the officer insisted on opening it. The bag contained a pistol and cash, but before the officer could act, Jackal swiftly shot him, then handed the pistol to the driver before shooting the driver with the officer's weapon. In the end, Jackal carefully staged the scene to look like a conflict before fleeing the area. Back at headquarters, Osita called Bianca to a meeting to discuss intercepted communications about another target, though they had yet to identify who the target was. Elsewhere, Nuria, Alvaro, and their mother debated whether to call the police, but Alvaro firmly opposed reporting Jackal. Shortly after, Jackal called Nuria, inviting her to join him in Paris to discuss some pressing matters. Hesitant but curious, Nuria agreed. Meanwhile, Bianca tracked down a sniper who had served in the military. The man was impressed with the precision of Bianca's target shooting, but considered Jackal's shot somewhat lucky. He also suspected Jackal had a background in the British Army, but doubted anyone had ever successfully fired at such a long distance of over 2 miles. The man then mentioned that he ran a WhatsApp group with other snipers, but when Bianca asked for details about the members, he refused to provide further assistance. Before she left, the man mentioned one legendary sniper from years ago named Alexander Dagan, who was confirmed to have died more than a decade ago. Intrigued, Bianca called Damien to ask him to investigate Alexander Dagan. Not long after, Nuria finally arrived at Jackal's hotel, where he confessed to her that he had been lying from the very beginning. Jackal explained that he had been hired by a major corporation to conduct industrial espionage. This involved using fake identities, bribing people, and sometimes engaging in illegal activities. Jackal believed this explanation would ease Nuria's concerns, but instead, she became furious, accusing him of putting her and their child's lives in danger. Jackal reassured her that they were not in any immediate danger and promised that after completing his final assignment, they could all be together. In the end, Nuria made him promise never to lie to her again, and Jackal gave her his word. The scene shifted to Larry, who appeared to be having a conversation with Allison about their past. However, it was revealed that Allison was already dead, lying in bed beside him. Larry, consumed by grief, used his phone to arrange a meeting with Bianca later that night. When Bianca arrived at the meeting spot, Larry ambushed and attacked her. She managed to escape and contacted MI6 emergency line, which connected her with Vince, an old ally stationed nearby. Acting quickly, Bianca devised a plan to lure Larry into a trap, but Larry suddenly stopped pursuing her and disappeared. Determined, Bianca followed him, leading to another confrontation where Larry attacked her again. Bianca fought back fiercely until Vince and backup arrived. Despite their efforts, Larry escaped by jumping onto a passing barge to cross the river. Later, Bianca and Vince went to Larry's apartment, where they discovered Allison's lifeless body. The next day, Bianca reported to Isabel, but had no new updates on her mission. Frustrated, Isabel reminded Bianca of the mess she was trying to clean up and pressured her to deliver results. Bianca suggested assigning Vince to her operation, stating that she trusted him, and Isabel agreed on the condition that Bianca provide regular updates on every detail of the mission. Meanwhile, Ol was finishing his swim on his private island. At one moment, his security team informed him about a contract taken out on his life, though Ol had anticipated this. Despite their advice to skip the river launch event, Ol and his assistant insisted the launch was too monumental to cancel. Ol then traveled to Estonia to inspect the venue and review its security procedures. At the time, a concert was being held at the location, and Jackal observed a high vantage point above the stage. Climbing up, Jackal confirmed it was an ideal spot for his shot. However, The structure began to open unexpectedly, causing Jackal to lose his footing and nearly fall to his death. Fortunately, the area began to close again, allowing Jackal to climb back to safety. In the process, Jackal lost his phone, but a helpful employee offered to assist him. The employee called the phone, and Jackal successfully retrieved it. Later, Bianca returned home and called out for Jasmine, only to find Larry holding a knife to her. Reacting quickly, Bianca shot Larry in the leg, incapacitating him. She demanded to know Norman's location, but Larry refused to talk. In her rage, Bianca almost killed him, but Jasmine stepped in and stopped her, pleading for restraint. On the other hand, Jackal returned to his apartment and found Zena standing there. He stared at her intensely, but showed no intention of harming her. Nervously, Zena explained that her employer was very powerful and urged Jackal to stick to the plan and avoid going rogue as he had with Elias. After a moment of thought, Jackal decided to follow the plan. Together, they took a boat to the city of Tallinn, where Zena offered to assist him with anything he needed. While observing the surroundings, Jackal noticed a woman using a prosthetic walking aid, sparking an idea in his mind. Meanwhile, Bianca met Vince at the hospital where Larry was being treated. After clearing the room of any onlookers, Bianca pressed a pillow against Larry's face, demanding to know Norman's location so they could find and kill him. Bianca even offered to save Norman's life by ensuring he would only face up to 5 years in prison if Larry cooperated. Despite her threats, Larry refused to talk, prompting Bianca to intensify her methods of interrogation. At the same time, Jackal contacted Norman, intending to hire him to build a rifle. Jackal asked about Norman's recent encounters, to which Norman responded that he had dealt with a few unexpected visitors but had everything under control. Concerned about risks, Jackal pressed for reassurance, and Norman assured him that the situation was resolved. However, Norman admitted he was injured during the incident and couldn't meet his deadlines without assistance. Hearing this, Jackal offered to help him. Under pressure, Larry eventually revealed Norman's location in Budapest, providing as much detail as he could recall, though his memory was incomplete. He also disclosed that Norman had shared Bianca's location with someone in MI6. With this information, Bianca and Vince returned to MI6 to piece together Norman's hideout from the clues provided. Bianca also deduced that Jackal's next target was Ul. As a result, she and Vince informed Osita of their findings. When Osita asked for Norman's location, Bianca hesitated but eventually provided it after Osita assured her he would handle the logistics and authorization discreetly. Osita began assembling a team for the mission. Shortly after, Jackal arrived in Budapest and was greeted by Norman, who remarked that Jackal looked leaner than he had imagined. Meanwhile, Bianca went to find Paul and Jasmine, who had moved in with Paul's ex-wife following recent events. Initially, Bianca almost got into an argument with Paul's ex-wife. When Paul intervened, he criticized Bianca for prioritizing her work over her family, claiming she never made time for them. Bianca defended herself, stating that her work involved life-and-death situations that required her to be exactly where she was needed. However, Paul and Jasmine expressed their disappointment, saying they no longer recognized her as the person they once knew. Back in Budapest, Jackal accompanied Norman to his compound. While inspecting Norman's collection of weapons, Jackal was struck by a flashback upon seeing a military sniper rifle. He explained his requirements to Norman, specifying that he needed a rifle made entirely of plastic, with a detachable trigger, compact enough to fit inside a prosthetic walking aid. Meanwhile, Nuria urged Alvaro to repair the safe and erase any evidence of their involvement with it. Unbeknownst to them, Jackal was monitoring their actions through his surveillance system, watching their every move. After hours of work, Jackal and Norman finally finished crafting their plastic rifle. They took a break, sitting down for a casual conversation that surprisingly showed they were getting along well. At that moment, Jackal brought up Norman's trip to Belarus, where he had reportedly been attacked. Though Norman tried to dismiss the topic, Jackal pressed for answers. Reluctantly, Norman revealed that he had been ambushed by a black British woman wielding a Glock 17. Jackal immediately identified this as the work of MI6 and demanded to know how Norman managed to escape. Norman explained that he had received help from an unknown number that warned him to leave immediately. Hearing this, Jackal warned Norman that serious consequences would follow if he failed to stay silent. At the same time, Bianca successfully tracked Norman's location and set out immediately. Back in Budapest, Jackal and Norman completed the disguised rifle and discussed its assembly process. Jackal, eager to test the weapon, received directions and a car key from Norman to drive to a remote wooded area. Following Norman's directions, Jackal arrived at the forest. He hung a watermelon from a tree, positioned himself at a considerable distance, and used a makeshift stabilizer to steady the rifle. After firing a few rounds to adjust the scope, Jackal finally used a special explosive bullet that obliterated the watermelon. Satisfied, Jackal headed back to Norman's house, but on the way, he received a call from Nuria. During the call, Nuria pretended everything was fine, but Jackal sensed something was off. As Jackal approached Norman's home, he noticed Bianca and her team in a car just ahead. They slowed down at Norman's gate and parked a short distance away. Jackal parked his car farther back and monitored them from a safe distance. Later, Bianca and her team cut the power to the surrounding area and prepared for the raid. Realizing the danger, Jackal called Norman to warn him about the incoming team, instructing him to clean up the place and escape immediately. In a hurry, Norman did his best to erase any evidence and grabbed the rifle before hearing the team approach. He opened fire on them, but Bianca and her team forced their way into the house and ultimately captured him. They tied him up and demanded information about Jackal's identity, but Norman refused to cooperate. As Bianca searched a nearby bag, she realized that Jackal might still be close. Suspecting he would return, she ordered her team to remain vigilant. When she demanded to know who the mole was, Norman stayed silent. Frustrated, Bianca revealed that she had tortured Larry to obtain Norman's location and intended to lock both of them away forever. Enraged, Norman stood up defiantly, only to be shot in the head by Jackal. In response, Bianca's team quickly identified Jackal's position and gave chase. Jackal soon leapt onto a horse and sped away, with Bianca and Vince pursuing him in a car. As gunfire erupted, Jackal veered into a forest, but was thrown from his horse. Bianca and her team halted at the forest's edge. They attempted to advance, but Jackal fired a warning shot, striking an agent's vest. Undeterred, Bianca closed in on him. Jackal, frustrated by his inability to hit her, made a daring leap off a cliff into a river below. Bianca fired several shots, hoping to hit him, but he disappeared into the water. After several tense minutes, Jackal emerged downstream, shivering from the cold. Seeking shelter, he stumbled upon an abandoned-looking barn and went inside to rest. However, as he drifted off to sleep, he was startled awake by the barn's owner, who captured him and tied him up. The next morning, Attila, the barn owner, confronted Jackal in Hungarian, scolding him for trespassing. Jackal tried responding in English and German, but Attila couldn't understand him. Frustrated, Attila eventually decided to release Jackal. However, as Jackal was leaving, Attila noticed his weapon. Startled, Attila held Jackal at gunpoint and led him back into the cabin. Attila then called his brother, Gabby, informing him about the stranger with a rifle he had caught at his barn. Gabby, in turn, contacted a friend, Laszlo, who spoke English, to talk with Jackal. At that moment, Jackal offered to pay them all in exchange for his freedom. Gabby accepted the deal, taking the weapon with him as they prepared to leave. On their way out, they encountered some police officers, who informed them about a shooting the previous night involving a foreigner. Later, Attila offered Jackal some food, but he refused. Insulted by the rejection, Attila tried to force Jackal to eat, but he resisted and overpowered him. Freeing himself, Jackal packed his belongings and left Attila dead in the barn. Jackal attempted to escape using Attila's car, but the engine wouldn't start. He then tried another vehicle, just as Gabby and Laszlo arrived back at the property. Watching from the shadows, Jackal observed them enter the house and discover Attila's body. In his rush to escape, Jackal accidentally crashed the car, drawing Gabby's attention. Gabby began shooting at him, but Jackal disappeared. Suddenly, Jackal emerged from under the car and shot Gabby, killing him. Seeing he was outmatched, Laszlo surrendered, handing over his car keys. In the end, Jackal took Laszlo as a hostage. Meanwhile, MI6 agents stormed Norman's compound, collecting evidence from the scene. At that moment, Bianca discreetly pocketed a jacket from the site before being informed about the bodies found at the farm. Elsewhere, Jackal forced Laszlo to drive him to a new location. During the journey, Jackal took Laszlo's phone and called Nuria. Feigning desperation, Jackal told her he was in grave danger and might not survive. Panicked, Nuria demanded to know where he was and eventually learned he was in Hungary. Eager to help, Nuria asked what she could do. Jackal then started explaining about a hidden room in their house, but Nuria cut him off, revealing she already knew about it. It turned out Nuria and her mother were at a divorce office on her mother's advice, but Nuria left abruptly, still conflicted. At the same time, Bianca and Vince arrived at the farmhouse where they inspected the two bodies. Bianca ordered fingerprints from the scene to be analyzed. Shortly after, Bianca received a call from Osita, instructing her to return to London under Isabel's orders to lead a task force to capture Jackal. Despite Bianca's protests, insisting Jackal was within her reach, Osita insisted and ended the call. In the days that followed, news broke about a gunman named Jackal being hunted by police. During the drive, Jackal expressed frustration to Laszlo about him showing up at the farmhouse. Surprisingly, Laszlo cheerfully remarked that Jackal had the face of a good man, triggering a flashback for Jackal. Pulling the car over, Jackal ordered Laszlo out. Laszlo, now in tears, begged for his life. Jackal, however, refused to kill him. Instead, he warned Laszlo that if he talked to the police, Jackal's associates would find and kill his family. Terrified, Laszlo swore not to speak. Jackal then disappeared into the night, leaving Laszlo shaken but alive. Later, Jackal went to a cafe and started a conversation with Zina, who was aware he was in Hungary. Zina informed him that their client was worried, but Jackal assured her he would complete the task. He also received an email from Nuria, who had just landed and provided the hotel where they could meet. Shortly after, Nuria arrived at the hotel, bringing a disguise for Jackal. At that moment, Jackal explained to her that dangerous people were after him and he needed to leave. Nuria, curious, insisted on seeing him prepare his disguise. Jackal complied, transforming himself in front of her. In no time, Jackal arrived at the airport disguised as an old man in a wheelchair. Coincidentally, Bianca and Vince were also at the airport, where Jackal spotted them as he passed by. Moments later, Bianca and Vince received a call from Osita, redirecting them to Tallinn, Estonia, as all would be there in 4 days to announce River. On Jackal's flight, Bianca and Vince boarded the same plane, sitting just a few rows ahead of him. Upon landing in Tallinn, Jackal watched as the agents got into their car and drove away. Jackal then arrived at his apartment and removed his disguise. Moments later, there was a knock at the door. 2 police officers were investigating a robbery on the floor above. At that moment, the 2 asked to see Jackal's ID. The female officer was particularly insistent, requesting his contact number and even calling it on the spot to verify. Once they left, Jackal called Rasmus, the theater employee who had helped him find his lost phone, inviting him out for drinks. At the bar, Jackal introduced himself as Peter, an engineer in town for work. After some casual conversation, Jackal and Rasmus returned to Jackal's apartment. The next morning, Jackal met Zina and informed her about Bianca and Vince, requesting her team to deal with them. Zina expressed a desire to work more closely with Jackal, but he made it clear he had no intention of contacting her again until his mission was complete. Meanwhile, Bianca and Vince arrived at the temporary MI6 office set up by Osita. There, they worked on creating a facial sketch of Jackal based on their brief encounter, distributing it to relevant authorities. Elsewhere, Ull was informed about the presence of an assassin in Hungary. His team urged him once again to cancel the river launch event, but Ull and his assistant insisted on proceeding to maintain his public image. Back at home, Nuria was visited by her mother and Alvaro, who came to check on her. They also asked for $40,000 from Jackal's stash to purchase a bar. Reluctantly, Nuria agreed and allowed Alvaro access to the safe. While Nuria and her mother talked, Alvaro stole more than $40,000 and also took one of Jackal's weapons, unaware that Jackal was watching everything through surveillance cameras. Afterward, Nuria closed the safe without checking its contents. Later, Jackal convinced Rasmus to take him to the theater that evening, claiming to admire its architecture. Rasmus handed him the keys, and Jackal used the opportunity to scout the area, carefully inspecting the place. On the other hand, Bianca and the agents received word that a female police officer recognized the sketch of Jackal. In response, Bianca and Vince immediately headed out to meet her, but just as they arrived, Zena's hired strike team opened fire on them. The agents returned fire, causing the attacker's car to crash. Realizing there was another party targeting them, Bianca insisted they continue their pursuit of Jackal. With the help of a SWAT team, they arrived at the apartment building where Jackal had been spotted, only to find it empty. Meanwhile, Jackal returned to Rasmus's apartment to collect his belongings. The two exchanged goodbyes before parting ways. Elsewhere, Anthony, Zena's employer who had hired the strike team, was furious at their failure. Jackal then headed to the theater where a concert was being held. Using his prosthetic walking aid, he passed through security undetected. After buying several bottles of water and snacks, Jackal quietly attended the concert. Once the concert ended, he returned to the spot he had scouted earlier and crawled into a narrow space directly above the stage. There, Jackal assembled his sniper rifle and spent the night resting. During the night, Jackal had another flashback, recalling his time as a soldier. He remembered vividly his first meeting with Nuria and the warm smile she gave him. Hours later, Bianca and Vince arrived at the theater, meeting with Ole's head of security, Keith. They provided him with a sketch of Jackal and urged him to lock down the building. Keith ordered his team to conduct a thorough search of the area and had sniffer dogs track Jackal using the jacket Bianca handed over. From his hidden position, Jackal watched as the agents entered the building. Keith brought Bianca and Vince to the stage where Ole would give his speech. As they examined the area, Jackal remained undetected. The next day, the event began, and Jackal prepared himself for the mission. At that moment, Keith ordered one final sweep of the building. Soon after, Bianca walked into the very area where Jackal was hiding, unknowingly passing just above his hiding spot. As the guests arrived and took their seats, Ole prepared to go on stage. Moments later, Ole stepped onto the stage. Nearby, a security guard approached Jackal's hiding spot, but Jackal silently eliminated him. He then killed another man using a sharpened credit card and took his position. As Ole began his speech, Jackal waited for him to step out from behind the bulletproof barrier. Just as Jackal had the perfect shot, a man suddenly rushed onto the stage with a weapon, throwing the scene into chaos. In the end, the shot missed, and agents quickly evacuated Ole. Blending into the panicked crowd, Jackal slipped out of the theater and vanished into the streets. Outside, Rasmus spotted Jackal walking away and called out to him. Jackal ignored him, but when Rasmus caught up, Jackal brutally killed him and left his body on the side of the road. The scene then shifted to a flashback in Helmand, Afghanistan, in 2013. It was revealed that Jackal, whose real name was Dagan, had been a sniper specialist in the British Special Forces. On that day, Jackal and his spotter, Gary, were targeting someone from a distance of 1,400 meters, 1.4 kilometers away. As a sniper, Dagan demonstrated unparalleled patience and precision. Back in the present, Timothy and his associates, including Zena, were frustrated with Jackal's failure to complete his mission. With only a week left before Ole's program launched, tension was running high as they scrambled to find a solution. Meanwhile, in the concert hall corridor, the police discovered a bottle of mineral water containing Jackal's urine. With this finding, Keith faced harsh criticism from Ole and his manager, who accused him of failing to ensure security. At the same time, the intelligence team struggled to identify Jackal's face despite having access to numerous CCTV cameras in the concert venue. Elsewhere, Bianca reached out to Damien to inquire about his progress on investigating Alexander Dagan. Damien revealed that Dagan's file was classified under Strap Due, 2 levels above top secret. In a flashback, after 6 hours of waiting, Jackal finally spotted his target and took the shot, successfully completing his mission. Jackal and his team celebrated their success. The scene shifted to Cyprus, where Jackal and Gary were relaxing. Jackal had earned the title of the best sniper in the entire British Army. During their stay, a man approached them with a job offer, asking them to assassinate a target he described as an enemy of the military. The man also offered them a significant reward for completing the mission. Returning to the present, Bianca stood before her superiors, insisting on uncovering the truth about Alexander Dagin. Although records stated he had died in Afghanistan, his body was never found. Determined, Isabel arranged a meeting for Bianca with the Foreign Secretary, seeking permission to access Dagin's classified files. Another flashback took the story to Ankara, Turkey, where Jackal and Gary carried out their first assignment as contract killers. After successfully completing their mission, they were paid and offered another job. However, as they were still active military members, Jackal declined the offer. Back in the present, Alvaro rushed to call Nuria after recognizing her husband, Jackal, in a widely circulated facial sketch. Shocked, Nuria immediately contacted Jackal, horrified to learn that the man she loved was now one of the most wanted fugitives. As a result, Jackal pleaded with his wife and brother-in-law to stay silent and keep everything they knew a secret. Another flashback revealed a mission assigned to Jackal's Special Forces team, capturing a Taliban leader named Najib, who was attending his cousin's wedding. The team set out for the mission, with Jackal and Gary providing sniper support from a distance. Initially, the team tried to de-escalate the situation by asking the armed Taliban guards to lower their weapons, emphasizing that their goal was to capture Najib alive. At the same time, Jackal and Gary spotted a man on a hill preparing to open fire. Suddenly, chaos erupted. The Special Forces team, equipped with machine guns, began massacring everyone at the wedding, men, women, and children alike. Witnessing the carnage, Jackal grew disgusted with the brutal actions of his comrades. To cover up the massacre, the entire location was destroyed, leaving no evidence of the atrocities committed. In the present, Bianca visited the prison to apologize to Larry's family for everything that had happened. However, Larry, deeply affected mentally and psychologically by the ordeal, chose to do the unthinkable. Overwhelmed by guilt, Bianca found herself haunted by the consequences of her actions. Back at headquarters, Bianca finally gained access to the classified file on Alexander Dagin. The file revealed that Dagin had been a member of an elite Special Forces unit, renowned for his expertise as a sniper. He had been deployed on missions across various countries, including the Middle East, with his last recorded mission in Afghanistan. This highly secretive unit specialized in targeted assassinations of Taliban leaders. However, the official record stated that the entire unit had been killed in a massive explosion during a mission. The truth, however, was much darker. During the mission, their convoy stopped after spotting a suspicious mound of dirt. Jackal and Gary volunteered to investigate using a metal detector. They found nothing but a child's bicycle. But moments later, their vehicle exploded, a trap orchestrated by Jackal using his phone. In the present, Xena confronted Jackal, furious over his failure to eliminate the target. Meanwhile, Ul returned to his private island, heavily guarded by armed personnel. At the same time, Bianca analyzed a photo of the Special Forces unit that she had obtained from the Foreign Secretary. Among the faces in the unit, only one was not obscured: Captain Baldwin. Determined to find answers, Bianca visited a hospital to meet Captain Baldwin, the team commander and the sole survivor of the explosion caused by Jackal. Baldwin, now bedridden and battling lung cancer, initially refused to cooperate with the MI6 agents. However, after Bianca promised to provide him with morphine to ease his pain, he agreed to share what he knew about Alexander Dagin. On the other hand, Jackal's next move remained uncertain. He was seen studying a machine, but his intentions were unclear. Back at headquarters, Bianca reflected on what she had learned about Dagin's personality. Known for being a loner, he had only been close to his spotter, Gary. Bianca theorized that if Dagin was still alive, Gary likely was too. However, Isabel dismissed Bianca's suspicions due to the lack of evidence and announced her decision to close the investigation. Unwilling to give up, Bianca reached out to Osita for support. But he was under internal investigation by MI6 agent Carver, who was scrutinizing his involvement in cases ranging from Norman to incidents in Belarus and Hungary. Osita became a suspect after receiving a message from a US-based number, which he deleted immediately. Back in Spain, Jackal retrieved several fake passports, each with different faces and names. Later, he spent time playing with his child while Nuria stayed in their room. Filled with doubt, Nuria confronted Jackal, demanding to know who he truly was. She questioned whether their entire marriage had been a lie and accused him of being a fraud. Unable to continue hiding his identity, Jackal finally confessed he was a contract killer. Meanwhile, Bianca visited Osita, sensing something was off. Unlike his usual self, Osita had lost interest in investigating Jackal's case, which had already been officially closed despite his prior enthusiasm. Bianca couldn't understand his sudden lack of resolve. On top of her professional struggles, Bianca found no support from her husband, even though she was fighting to uncover the truth and prevent further casualties. Jackal, on the other hand, promised Nuria that he would complete one final mission within the next 24 hours and retire afterward. While Jackal prepared for his last job, Alvaro arrived, inviting Jackal to lunch with a man named Jimmy Tiguero. Hearing the name, Nuria was immediately alarmed. She couldn't believe Alvaro was proposing a business partnership with someone like Jimmy, a notorious gangster. Worried about the potential danger Alvaro was dragging them into, Nuria warned Jackal, but he reassured her that everything would be fine. Without hesitation, Jackal, the former sniper from an elite military unit, agreed to meet Alvaro at Hotel Sierra at 2 p.m. Meanwhile, on his private island in Croatia, Ul was approached by a board member carrying a message from the other executives, urging him to delay the launch of River by a month. However, Ul firmly refused, despite the stock plummet following recent events. He argued that even a 3-day delay would cost his company, Doghouse, $1.2 billion. According to Ul, the media's panic was driven by the revolutionary impact of his technology on the global economy. Determined, he announced that River's launch would proceed as planned the next day in his New York office. Elsewhere, Timothy received a visitor, Jimmy, who demanded to know Jackal's whereabouts. Back in Spain, Jackal borrowed a luxury yacht from his friend Guillermo, adding more mystery to his plan. Meanwhile, Alvaro and gangster boss Jimmy Tiguero waited impatiently at the hotel for Jackal to show up. Alvaro tried to assure Jimmy that Jackal had millions of dollars, but to their surprise, Jackal assassinated Jimmy from a distance, using his sniper rifle from the yacht. After completing his task in Spain, Jackal set off for Croatia to finish his previously failed mission. The next day, Jackal rented a boat and sailed far from the shore. Once out at sea, he killed the boat's owner and began assembling his sniper rifle, now upgraded with advanced technology capable of targeting Ul's private residence. Before aiming at his target, Jackal tested his weapon by shooting at rocks near the house. Spotting a surveillance drone, Jackal pretended to be fishing. Shortly after, Ul's security team noticed Jackal's boat and found it suspicious, as it was unusual for fishing vessels to be in that area. However, since the boat was positioned 2 miles outside the security perimeter, they didn't take immediate action, allowing Jackal to continue preparing for his mission. As Ul exited his villa, he was surrounded by a protective shield of bulletproof glass. Jackal, watching from a distance, steadied his rifle, but the movement of the waves caused him to miss his first shot. Regaining focus, Jackal aimed at Ul as he swam. Suddenly, Ul's security team arrived on jet skis, but Jackal quickly disabled them with precise shots. Using another device, he successfully shot down a surveillance drone before attempting his aim at Ul once more. Though his initial shot struck one of the guards, Jackal finally succeeded in killing Ul. During his escape, Jackal was pursued by a police patrol, resulting in a high-speed chase. Despite their efforts, none of the officers could apprehend him. Meanwhile, Timothy and his associates celebrated as Ul's manager announced the billionaire's death, which forced an indefinite postponement of the River project. Elsewhere, Bianca examined the death of Jimmy Tiguero, who was shot from a distance of 1 kilometer while aboard a yacht. Though unrelated to Ul, Bianca believed the same person was behind both killings, suggesting a personal motive in the gangster's assassination. However, Isabel dismissed the case as closed and advised Bianca to take a leave of absence. Frustrated, Bianca chose to resign. As she was about to step into an elevator, she crossed paths with the Foreign Secretary arriving at MI6 headquarters. Isabel reported to the Foreign Secretary that Bianca would no longer interfere with the case as she had tendered her resignation. To her surprise, The Foreign Secretary instructed her to allow Bianca to continue her investigation of Jackal, stating that it was critical to handle him once and for all. Meanwhile, Jackal was involved in a car accident. At the same time, Nuria arrived at the police station to bail out Alvaro. Frustrated, she lashed out at her brother, calling him a parasite who constantly created problems. While Alvaro labeled Jackal a psychopath, despite this he also acknowledged that it was Jackal who had saved him from the gangster boss. Elsewhere, Jackal was rescued from his burning car by a passing man, only to turn on him, hijack his pickup truck, and kill him. Bianca, on the other hand, visited her husband on campus, pleading with him to return home. She promised to focus on being a good wife and taking care of their family. Meanwhile, Jackal reached a forest, where he set the stolen pickup on fire and pushed it into a ravine to erase any traces. Noticing an elderly couple camping nearby, he convinced them to drive him to a hospital. At the same time, Bianca was surprised by an unexpected visit from Isabel at her home. Isabel urged Bianca to resume her secret mission and eliminate a target as part of an unsanctioned operation. To her shock, Bianca refused. The scene, then showing Jackal traveled with the elderly couple toward the hospital. Encountering traffic caused by a police checkpoint, he forced them to take an alternative route. During a break in the journey, the couple attempted to kill Jackal, forcing him to retaliate and eliminate them. Despite the chaos surrounding him, Jackal pressed on, determined to complete his journey and remain out of reach. Moments later, Jackal called his wife, expressing his desire to take her and their child on a trip abroad. However, Nuria, sensing something was wrong, only wanted Jackal to stay home and out of danger. Meanwhile, Bianca and Vince flew to Spain to continue their mission, as directed by Isabel. Before leaving his hideout, Jackal detonated his car, erasing any trace of his location, and continued his escape in a travel van. Elsewhere, Bianca and Vince arrived at a Spanish police station. Bianca asked the detective to arrange a meeting with the man last seen with Jimmy Teguero before his death. When the detective refused, Vince requested the man's name, which was revealed to be Alvaro. The detective further disclosed that Alvaro had an older sister married to a wealthy British man named Charles. Soon after, Bianca and Vince began surveillance on Nuria's house. At the same time, Nuria opened Jackal's private safe, taking some money to prepare for her departure. However, she hesitated, overcome by uncertainty. Later that evening, Nuria called for a taxi, which was spotted by Bianca, who assumed Nuria was trying to escape. Shortly after, Jackal returned home, only to find that Nuria was no longer there. At that moment, Zina informed Jackal that intelligence agents were pursuing him in Spain. Without delay, Jackal began packing to flee again. Suddenly, Alvaro arrived at the house, but was killed by Bianca, who had already infiltrated the property. Hearing the gunshot, Jackal, who was in the hidden vault room, saw Bianca through the glass panel. In the darkness of the house, an intense gunfight erupted between the two. Eventually, Vince was killed, followed by Bianca, who was fatally shot by Jackal. Meanwhile, at the airport, Nuria discarded her phone and disappeared as Jackal tried to call her. While driving away, Jackal was involved in a serious car accident. Sometime later, it was confirmed that both Bianca and Vince had died in the line of duty. Before her death, Bianca had managed to send a message to Osita, revealing that Isabel had ordered her to take down Jackal. She warned that if she failed, Osita would know what truly happened. Miraculously, Jackal survived the accident. Recovering from his injuries, he reunited with Zina, ready to embark on his next mission. The end. Moral lesson from the story: never take life advice from a jackal. If he says he's in trouble, you're probably the backup plan. Also, if someone starts prepping a disguise in front of you, just know you're part of their exit strategy.